Alright, welcome back everybody to another Culz Reviews on today, May 7th. Because it is May 7th, the anniversary of the sinking of the Lusitania, we decided to check out a documentary. So as usual, my name's Keegan, joining me tonight is...
Matt.
Colin.
Sam.
Hi, I'm Andrew.
Alright, so the story of the Lusitania was it had just, left New York, was coming over during a tumultuous time that was World War I. Quite a few U-boats were in the Irish Channel at the time around Great Britain because obviously Germany and Great Britain were at war. America not at war at the time. And Lusitania was struck by a torpedo from a U-boat, sunk with 1,198 lives lost. And this really was a situation that got America into the war. There was propaganda going pretty much right away. And then you learn later on, well, maybe there was some stuff that was leaked, maybe helped Lusitania get targeted. But we'll never know. But we're going to talk about this documentary, The Sinking of the Lusitania, a 2007 Discovery Channel documentary. So before they went off the rails with stupid Megalodon ones, they made some decent documentaries. So I guess we'll talk about things we learned, and we'll start with Andrew. Andrew, I know they might not be able to see your mouth. You have to talk a little bit louder, okay?
Okay.
What did you learn?
Well, I learned that pretty much all of the German U-boats were looking for the Lusitania. That was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Did you learn anything about how the whole situation was handled at the end?
Yeah, it was pretty sneaky. They pretty much put all the blame on the captain. And he pretty much just took it. He was just like, well, I guess if they're going to blame me, they're going to blame me. There's nothing I can do about that.
True. So actually, a few of us have been to the Field Museum and the Science and Industry Museum in Chicago. And if you go to the Science and Industry Museum, obviously now it's enclosed. At one point, it was sitting outside. But they have a they have a U-boat. It's the U-505. Not the same one we watched today, but similar design. It was pretty cool. Kind of brought back some memories of that. And hey, hopefully one day we'll get there soon for you guys. We'll shoot a little video. But do you guys want to talk about the U-boat? Like when we were on it, like how cramped it was, perhaps?
Yeah, very, very small spaces for 35 people fitting all in there. That's pretty tight corridors.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the area we're in is about the space they had. And they had like multiple bunk beds up. Like your bunk bed, they were hard, like wooden bunk beds too, not even comfier bunk beds, and just being down there in the hot conditions for, days on end, not seeing sunlight, that'd be tough. I do like in the Science and Industry Museum though, they have like a recreation of like depth charges and
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
it's definitely a good experience. Definitely suggest checking that out if you can, when you can.
Hopefully we'll be able to bring that to you guys maybe this year, we'll find out. I know Chicago's museums are back open, so there's fingers crossed that we can get there for you guys. But getting back to the documentary, Sam, what did you learn from it?
Oh, all the different scenarios that played out beforehand and what came of it afterhand. I don't know. It's just all very interesting, like the actions that were taken otherwise potentially could have been avoided without the fog. Like the fog road definitely did something to hinder it, and I mean, you don't want to just blindly sail into a fog.
Especially not at top speed.
Yeah.
You hit land going top speed, you are done.
Yeah, and then, it's just all unfortunate events. But I will say it definitely, from what we know, both sides were kind of played in the whole scenario.
Yeah, there was definitely a hand that got dealt to both sides, and one person dealt it to both sides to
Kind of shows you what politics are like.
Yeah, it definitely antagonized America and then made Germany look worse than Germany already looked to the world.
Mm-hmm.
This was obviously before World War II, where even then America tried to stay neutral, but, you know.
Well, when you attack, a civilian boat.
Yeah, and they used there's a lot of pamphlets and posters with, like, the German Kaiser standing over dead babies in the water and stuff, because a lot of kids died in this one.
It was like 39 out of the
100 and some survived. I mean, it's pretty terrible, because if you compare it to, like, Titanic, which is obviously a more well-known one, it's more romanticized, because it's, it's first trip, kind of man versus nature, even though if you look at the Titanic story, there's a lot of human error. They were in the wrong location. They gave the wrong coordinates to be saved. Even if the Carpathia had gone right away, or not the California, even if the California went right away, they were going to the wrong coordinates, because at one point they had to use, what were they called?
I think those were sextants or something.
Yeah, so it's these weird older maritime ways to travel, and you had to, like, look at stars, and they had the wrong time. They timed just enough that they were off by hundreds of miles. That's why it took so long to discover the Titanic outside of how deep it was, when they were looking in the wrong spot.
But wasn't the California the one that could see the rockets?
They could see the rockets, but still, once the ship went down, they were still quite, they were quite a way. We'll have to watch that one. That one was interesting. But that one, there's a lot more human error, where this one felt almost more tragic in a way. Because there was human error, but it was almost, somebody played the human error. Like, both sides were kind of, like you said, were just, the ship was just sailing and the U-boats were just doing what the U-boats were told to do. And somebody dealt hands to both sides so that things would happen. But it feels more tragic. Obviously, it sinks a lot faster than the Titanic, where the Titanic sank in 2.5 hours. This one was 18 minutes. It exploded multiple times. There was fire coming out of the smokestacks. It listed, so people are flying off into the cold waters and freezing to death. Just some of the stories, if you listen to, we'll find you the other documentary, it's kind of hard to watch. You listen to people, like, talk about some stuff, and you're like, ooh, can't imagine that. Colin?
Well, my takeaway with this is just how, like Sam said, how both sides kind of had a hand at it. And I don't know if it's truly been proven that the Lusitania had arms on board.
Yeah.
It has?
But not big arms, they were all small cartridges that they've been found.
I still don't think it was really justified, but I don't know.
No, but so the shells were something newer that Churchill had said was okay. And then somehow it leaked that the Lusitania was carrying arms, which made them okay to sink. That's why if you look at a lot of the politics, like Andrew said, you kind of see a story being painted. We're not going to put none. We're just going to put some things we've heard.
1915.
Legally we're not going to
1915.
Still you might be able to get hit for slandering. I'm not going to say nothing.
But also how some of the survivors said that they heard 3 explosions, including the initial torpedo. And I don't know if it's been proven that there's ever been more than just one. I know they were saying that 2, possibly 3 hit. That made the British look better or something?
So there was more than one explosion that people heard, so the British used it to say there was more than one torpedo. But that's still one of the great mysteries. So the torpedo hits,
and
then all of a sudden, pretty quickly to that, there's a massive, the other side of the ship goes just out, and that shouldn't happen in a torpedo.
No.
And that even to this day, the cartridges they found aren't exploded. So they're not sure. That's one of the biggest mysteries, is why was there that second one. And then there's supposedly a 3rd explosion, so it definitely helped the British look better. Because they were like, yeah, there was 3 torpedoes.
I think the theories behind the other two explosion sounds would be the coal bunker or the steam with the cold Atlantic water hitting the boilers would cause a
Which
rupture.
would make sense going back to our Titanic episode where they were afraid that the boilers were to explode. So that could be it when the fire went out, the smokestack.
Oh, yeah.
That would be terrifying. The ship's already sinking and fireballs just shooting up. Matt, what did you take away?
A lot of interesting stuff that makes you ponder. Obviously, the conflicting stories, the loss of life, the fashion in which it was done, it doesn't surprise me, given who did the attack.
I mean, regardless, they were supposed to have protection.
Yeah, what gets covered up?
Yeah, where was the British? You know, they were supposed to be there with their protection. They told them that. And then, like you said, covered up. At the end, he was like, "We never received these messages." That's just like, what?
Yeah. Go burn all the messages.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. And at the end, it does say eventually they did admit that it was one torpedo that hit. Obviously, well after the fact.
But now was the explosion on the other side, the outward explosion?
No, because
at the same
this was a couple minutes later. In the movie, obviously, it's pretty close together, but the torpedo hit, and the ship's still going, and then all of a sudden, there was a massive explosion.
Well, could there have been a pressure blowout? Again, with hot and cold meeting each other, could that not have caused a pressure?
Well, what they're thinking too is the cold water going into the coal bunker somehow triggered the coal dust. I'd have to dig into this more, but that's the one I heard that a lot of people are like, seems plausible. I don't know. This could be something. I guess we could get a model of the Lusitania and see what we could try.
When did they lose like steam pressure to generate the electricity? I guess
It
was
was.
that after the first.
It was after the Well, it might have been about the same time.
Second explosion before the third.
Yeah, and
So that honestly could be the steam as well.
yeah. Well, and it could be the location too, depending how big down below the decks the explosion was. But yeah, so the ship lost signal and it kept going for 2 miles before finally there was enough water that it stopped the ship. And because it was pushing on at not full steam, but 18 knots, it was just like ramming water in and it was dangerously tipping. And that was partially why it sank faster. Sort of going like the Titanic too.
Mm-hmm.
Because they couldn't slow down.
Yeah. And they couldn't do the lifeboats either.
Because it was going too fast.
The list prevented.
Yeah, the list, and then they're still going too fast. Eventually they tried, and the majority of the lifeboats were either damaged or flipped, and people were more panicked than the Titanic. I mean, the Titanic got to that panic because they waited way too long. They waited almost up to the last 45 minutes to do anything.
Well, you gotta think in any situation like that, there's gonna be panic.
Yeah, but you think how quickly it happened. Where the Titanic, they didn't think anything of it while the ship was actively sinking. Up until water finally breached the bow, then they started really panicking. Where this one, they went into panic right away. Because
Well,
it was
said they were sinking faster.
a lot faster. Well, you didn't have this big notion that the Lusitania was unsinkable going into it.
Well, then it happened after the Titanic, so I think
Yeah.
people realized what could happen, and so
Well, and this is obviously an explosion, so they're like, okay, ice, one thing maybe we can survive, versus like a giant fireball. I don't know. One thing I learned is just thinking how terrifying it would be to be in the elevator. One of the people that died in the elevator.
Yeah, that would be horrifying.
Trapped in.
Just knowing you're just trapped.
And you can't get out, and it's just like, I guess, coming to terms. Kind of like that guy when he broke his leg in that Titanic one. It was just like, I guess this is it.
Mm-hmm.
But at least then he was a little bit more time and more calm, like those people. Like, I can't imagine them. Terrifying. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that was something I learned when I watched it. Well, at least today I thought about it again. I was like, wow, that would be.
Gave you a new fear?
I mean, yeah, at least with heights, if you were to fall, you'd be over pretty quickly, I guess. Either you're going too fast, you would die, or you'd hit the ground. With that, you have time, and then you have time to suffocate. Or drown, suffocate, you know. And I'm like, ooh. It's supposed to be really painful, too.
Yeah, 2 to 4 minutes of your lungs filling of water.
Gives you terrible. I mean, it was a terrible tragedy, and it's often overlooked compared to, like, the Titanic. It's something else that happened, the Titanic, and it's probably because it happened during World War One. So many people were dying that it kind of got swept under the rug. It is talked about as something historical, obviously, because a lot of people say, yeah, this is what turned America's, mindset into, okay, we need to go help them out. This isn't right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really does get swept under. It's not a story that gets told like the Titanic over and over again. Oh, something else I did like when I first watched it was how they told both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's another Midway that we watched I like because they did the same thing. But I like hearing both sides of the story, It's interesting that way. Especially in a story like this where it's so conflicting, you don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so I think that brings us to the end of our recollections of this one. So we're going to get to ratings and recommendations. Starting with Andrew. Andrew, what would you say?
I'm gonna give it a 9. I really liked the acting in it. It was nice and smooth. I almost felt like I was watching a movie as opposed to a documentary.
Sam, what about you?
I'll give it a 9. It was good. Wore my pirate hat for the occasion. Because all we know, it could have been pirates.
I mean, they were called pirates.
Why is all the rum gone though? Where did the rum go?
They drink all of it.
Sam's also getting his acting chops in because he's about to play Butch Cassidy.
pirate.
Should I not have said that? Shh. So if you guys heard it, we are going to do a Butch Cassidy documentary. Alright, Colin?
I'll give it a 9 as well.
Alright, Matt, what about you?
A 9, Yeah. I did love, like we brought up earlier, that they were both sides of the story. They brought light to, you're watching a documentary, but yet you're really not. You're watching a movie, or maybe it's the other way around. You're watching a movie, but you're watching a documentary. I don't know, but it was good.
A docudrama.
Yeah, you got sucked into it. They skipped the love story and just stuck with the story of what the event was.
I mean, they did have a pseudo love story going with Vander, and then the girl from Broadway that dies on the elevator.
Yeah.
Like he was cheating on his wife with her.
Well, a couple stories of friendship and following one family of 5.
Yeah, family of 5, and then Avis. Which Avis is like, if you know the story of Lusitania, you probably have heard of her because she's wrote a whole diary the whole time. So she has one of the best recollections of the sinking itself. What happened?
That's pretty neat.
So maybe at some point we'll do that book for you. But yeah, I'd say probably about a 9. I was trying to think. I'm like, yeah, I'd probably rate this one a little bit above the Titanic one. I do like that one, but this one...
Which Titanic?
Definitely more than the 1997 Titanic. But more than saving the Titanic that we did on this channel. I don't know if I'd put it above the Titanic one. I'll have to see when we rewatch that one in November. Because that one's pretty good too. But yeah, I'd say it's really interesting. It plays like a docudrama. It has somebody, if you've watched The Mummy with... what's his name?
Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, so
Fraser.
if you watch the Brendan Fraser mummies...
Fraser.
You'll recognize the main lead here is John Hannah. Obviously was in all 3 of those ones. So, it's definitely got top-notch acting. You learn some history, and they don't try to slow it down. There wasn't any parts that I thought dragged or made me be like, oh, what am I doing tonight?
It's not getting weaponized.
Yeah, because I really would be dragging all night.
Right. Your heart will always go on.
Hey, at least when we watch the Titanic one, we'll learn where they got the Rose character from. It's actually from the Titanic.
You mean the old lady that threw the heart in the ocean?
Yeah. But we'll get to that when we get to the Titanic, not Titanic. Because at the end you're like, whoa, that's where they got that story from? You couldn't even get it from the Titanic? Alright, anyways, if you want to see more Culz reviews, click that link in front of my face today. I'm used to being on the outside, that's kind of weird. If you want to see more from us here at Culz Paranormal, click that link in front of Sam. And don't forget to hit that like somewhere in front of Andrew and give us a subscribe.
And switch that notification bell from personalized to all if you want to be notified on all of our videos.
Yeah, and let us know. What's your favorite ship movie?